Good evening and welcome to our opening round of the Lukáš Vidra Trophy 2021. Coming to you tonight from Silverstone, where we are driving the Jaguar XJR 15s in a more or less spec series race.
Sound resumed.
And with me in the booth tonight I have actually three people at the moment. We have Alberto Ibañez. Good evening, Alberto.
Good evening, everybody.
I also have Jason White here. Good evening.
How's it going?
And Richard Wilkes. Good evening, Richard.
Hello, everyone.
I'm just doing some small fixes as I go here. As I said, we are at Silverstone this evening on the international, I believe the GP layout, I think it's called, both back then and nowadays. A 5.226 kilometer or 3.4247 miles long track, and our drivers in this Jaguar event will be driving for 20 laps, which will equal just under 65 miles, and it'll be some frantic and terrifying 20 laps for our drivers. So what would you say, Jason and Richard, who are going to drive in this event?
Well, there's going to be a lot of sawing at the wheel, trying to keep these cars pointed straight. Anybody who's done their homework and researched these vehicles will know that they were not the easiest cars to drive. They had lots of power, being that they used a detuned version of the V12 engine that won Le Mans. But if you expect to be able to drive these things the way you drive other vehicles that are track cars, you're going to be in for a rude awakening. These things slip, slide, and are very challenging to bring to a halt, especially. So you're going to have to really, really baby the car. Also, from the standpoint of if you want brakes and tire tread left by the end of the race.
And I've got
these are basically
sorry,
street cars. No, these are basically street cars on slicks. We have been talking about this in the forum, and they are very challenging to drive. But so is any street car if you're going to toss it around up and down on a real track. So it's a matter of not overdriving, both because the car doesn't allow it, and because you will be killing the tires.
Yeah, 20 laps may seem like a short run, but I guarantee you in these cars that will be plenty. because you will be out of tread by the time the race is almost over, and it's definitely going to be a challenge.
It's certainly going to be, and I've brought up the statistics of the 1991 Jaguar XJR 15 for you all to get a relative idea of what beasts our drivers will be handling tonight. These Jaguars with the detuned Le Mans engine, otherwise more or less complete road cars with a roll cage in them, have a top speed of 215 miles an hour, which I believe is roughly 325 kph. And they manage 0 to 60 or 0 to 100 kph in if you're in that part of the world where you use those metrics, in 4.0 seconds. So very, very fast, even by modern standards. They are 6-liter V12 engines, producing 450 brake horsepower at 6,250 RPM. And from what I can make out, they are probably a little bit finicky if you over-rev them. And sorry, go ahead.
No question. They are. Yeah.
And they weigh in at 2,315 pounds, which I believe would translate to roughly 1.2 1.3 tons.
A bit less, I think, 1.1. But anyway, it's a heavy car by racing standards, that's for sure.
For certainly, especially with a bit of fuel in it as well. And if you were lucky enough to have the capital to invest in this kind of car, you would have to part ways with 500,000 quid, which probably would have gotten you quite a nice kip or accommodation if you would prefer that instead.
Yeah, the original series of these cars, there were 3 races run in 1991 with these cars, and they were purchased by private investors, and they hired drivers to drive them in the races, and they were basically support races for 1991 F1 races. I believe it was Silverstone, Monaco, and Spa hosted races with these cars, and in most cases they were the field was about 16 cars. We've expanded the field a bit for the people that want to take part. So you may see dupes of some skins, but that's what the tabs are for. You'll see the name above it. But you can find video of these cars on YouTube. The most notable one, I think, is the test drive that Tiff Needell did at Silverstone, where he's all over the place with the car, just shocked at how tiring it is to drive. The cars were also pretty lively at Monaco. You could say that this is similar to the IROC series in that the cars are all, the same. It's a spec series. All the cars are the same. But one thing to keep in mind is that you do have a little bit of leeway. You can adjust the brake pressure. There's a few other small things like tire pressures you can adjust. The rest of it is just stock. So driving skill is going to be on display here for sure. Drivers to watch in this race, I would definitely keep an eye on Steve Parker, because he's a driver who we know is very quick in heavy cars. And there are other drivers that are really looking quick. Mikey Grems, who had an excellent USAC debut, he's looking good. Tiago's looking excellent. It's definitely going to be survival of the fittest.
That certainly would be a correct term for this, I think. We've seen quite a few lawn mowings and offs during practice for this event. This being the Lukáš Vidra Trophy, in memory of Lukáš Vidra, who we lost 3 years ago now, I think. Has a slightly different point scheme to it. We've slightly altered the points paying to be dependent on how long the races are this year. Previously it was simply 15 points for the winner, no matter the length. Here it'll be 30 to 60 minute race. The winner will take away 15 points. Second will score 12. Third 10. Fourth 8. Fifth 6 points, and then it drops by 1 point down to 10th, who scores 1 point. And the series is obviously to find the most well-rounded driver, and I don't think we could have chosen a much trickier way to start the series with these Jaguars.
Yeah, this is basically a street car, as we have said, and since the Lukáš Vidra Trophy, the whole point of it is proving who is the more versatile driver around, featuring street cars, because they are, as I said already, really street cars with slicks, is probably going to be one of the most challenging things, one of the most interesting, but also one of the best measures of who is really able to adapt, because there's one thing I think we didn't mention yet. These cars have nearly anything adjustable. I think Jason mentioned, there's the brake bias, but in general terms, these are cars that is turnkey. You get them as they are, just start driving, and there you go. You need to adapt to the car, because the car for sure is not going to adapt to you, as opposite to all the racing cars, especially open wheels, that we tend to race that have lots of adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly so, and one of the biggest things with these, I'd say as well, is the fact that because they weigh quite a bit. The act of balancing the weight transfer and how to make that work in your favor will prove a very tricky proposition indeed for everyone here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. If you manage the weight transfer well, it can actually help you through corners really well. Like if you balance it just right, like especially through the Maggots, Beckett's, and Chapel section. If you can just balance the weight transfer right, you're good through there. And similarly through Abbey, if you can balance the weight transfer right, then the car is very smooth through there. If you get it wrong, though, God help you, because
once it lets go,
yeah,
there's nothing in the world that's going to put it back in place.
Yeah, you're basically along for the ride, and you just pray that you have enough runoff. And in some cases, there is plenty of runoff here. So if you do lose the car and you're off the track, you might be able to get it back. But there are other sections where that's not going to happen. So I don't know. It's going to be. It'll be interesting to see the strategies that people employ. Some people, I'm sure, are just going to go for it right from the green flag. But then the problem is if they push the car too hard, by the end, they're going to have very little tread left, and the car will be a mess to drive. Other people will probably take a little bit more of a slow and steady approach, hoping to pick up some spots by taking advantage of OPP. And as they go up the field, because they haven't been going full on 11 tenths from the start, they'll have a little bit more tread left at the end, and they'll be able to race a bit more at the end. So maybe that's a smarter way to go, but we'll see.
Another perspective that we can highlight here is that because this is an absolutely spec race, it's going to set very clearly what the pecking order among our drivers is, because everybody's on the same equipment. So yeah, even if they are personal cars and you get some people that are better than others, in general terms, you can see that the way they do this race, how quick they are and how they end, is going to basically tell you who is who in ISO at this moment.
Yeah, pretty much. It's true. Yeah, look at the people who are tops in the warm-up right now. You got Schlepinski, Mikey Grems, Thiago Canola, Peter Hlavik, Anders Nilsson, David Jakes, Juha Boss, David Saber, Brian Janik. I mean, these are all people that are typically very fast, regardless of what they're driving.
Yes, Lapinski has really come on his own in these last years, especially for this one. He's proving to be in really top form. I remember when he started racing with us, he showed a picture of the equipment he was using, and it was like terrifying. Like, how can you drive with that old wheel and even be quick? So he was already showing his quality. I think he updated his wheel, and it's really showing because he's being at the top in nearly all the races. He won at Phoenix. He won the class race in the RM. And here he is now with a lap time that I believe is even quicker than what we have seen in qualifying.
Speaking of versatile drivers that will do well in just about anything, I'd like to extend a personal thank you to everybody who tuned in for the premiere of our latest podcast yesterday. We had a very special guest, and those of you who have not seen it, you might want to take a minute and watch it after this race, because it's we had racing royalty with us, and it was
it's indeed
an experience I won't soon forget.
Yeah, it's a real experience to be able to interview a racing legend, a living racing legend, for a change, because we know how racing in the past, how dangerous it was. So there are unfortunately many drivers who are no longer with us, be it because of age or because of accidents. But it was really an amazing experience, and I gotta say, the most amazing thing is how someone who is so famous, so gifted, who has been there, done that, everything, is simply able to go and give an interview to guys that he probably didn't know at all before from the sim racing community, and is there so great, such a nice host. I mean, it's really fantastic. I have nothing but good words. And it's that kind of people that when you know them more, when you meet them in real life, I mean, they live completely up to the big expectations that you could have.
Yeah, we've heard in the past you don't want to meet your heroes because you'll probably be disappointed. In the case of Johansson and Mario, that has certainly not been the case. If I was fans of both of them before, and I'm an even bigger fan of both of them now.
Yeah.
That I can completely agree with, especially with Johansson. And I didn't have as much of a hand in the interview of Mario, but I watched it afterwards, and it was a fantastic experience just to watch that interview.
He was so gracious. I mean, really, really great. I mean, especially given what he's been dealing with in the past month. Obviously, he lost his brother, and I'm sure he's still dealing with that. But he was very generous with his time, and it definitely motivates me to go and find more people to interview and to get insightful tidbits from. So we're working on that as well. So this is not going to be the last one for sure.
Certainly so, and while it's very dearie me, as I thought that we would go on board with Anders Nilsson and to watch a lap, but he got caught up in another driver's misfortune.
Well, I'm gonna head to my office and get ready. Have fun, guys. Hopefully it won't be a Benny Hill situation out here.
Well,
Thank
very
you.
much best
Good luck
of
for the race too. So you can watch Cesarius if you want. He's the quickest guy on track now, and is now about coming to the end of a lap that he's been doing.
Oh yes, I thought he was.
Yeah, well, he seems untouchable because we have seen and we were wondering and marveling at how quick some of the newcomers are, like Mickey Krems, but also, of course, Thiago Canola. We're not discovering Thiago Canola today, but my oh my, Cesarius. And he's coming now to start a new lap. You can see there, the car is there moving, twisting, and doing all kind of things. But there he goes for another lap.
Yep, so
Crossing
down
here the start-finish line. Here, heavy braking here, very complicated because the car has so much inertia. And now to head to the new Maggots and Beckett's complex that replaced what was a single very quick turn here. This is the one that was done to accelerate the cars here. And it's a decreasing speed combination because the more you get into these corners, the slower you are going until you're finally here nearly stopped. Now you come accelerating very quickly out of here. This is one of the longest straights. The car is going to top here about 160, not so much. Yeah. Now heavy braking here for this long corner. It is still one of the original ones that was in the track. But now heading to one of the new chicanes. And this is a very slow combination left to right.
Oh dear.
There you go. That's what happened when you hit one of those high curves. Nearly let it go there. Yeah, he comes rounding up. Yeah, you see, he was pushing a bit too much.
Let's see if we have luck with anyone being in a similar part of the track.
Yes, I think Jason Whited is there now. No, he's on the first turn.
Well, let's see. Well, Dave Miller will be there shortly, so he's coming through the Maggots and now Beckett's through Chapel Curve. There's a left-hander as he hits the curb, and that's unsettles his car.
Yeah, it's evident that everybody after doing the qualifying is now trying to push and see the real limits.
Let's jump on board with Steve Parker then. I'd expect him to be able to keep it on the road at least, so he's now coming through Beckett's and Chapel Curve onto the Hangar Straight. Up at the top gear. As you mentioned, heavy braking here. And the thing they did with this corner stow was that they made it tighten on the exit, so you have to get it back to not hit outside curb there.
Yes, so here we are again at the chicane.
Yep, at Club.
Very precise Steve here, using all of the track. Coming out accelerating. And now for this very quick to the left, where you barely need to lift a bit, touch the brakes as he did. That very, very good move by Steve, because you need to tap the brakes to make the car load the front. And now this is very complicated because you come from a jump and the car switches the weight very quickly. Again, one of these very, 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 very slow chicanes. And there you see, he was also pushing it a bit too much.
Well, it comes into the second hairpin of this complex, which is Brooklands, and now Luffield 1, and then into 2. This exit of this one is very, very paramount for having a passing opportunity, and then through Woodcote, this long sweeping right-hander, barely full throttle in these cars. And now back at Copse, the first corner of the lap. And as you can see, watching this, just trying to get to grips with the car from qualifying, everyone have to have a lot of work on their hands trying to keep the cars on track. They were and are that tricky to drive if you try to push it beyond the car's limit. But it has to be said that it's a very, very nice car to drive within the limit. The problem is staying within that limit when you're racing other cars.
Yeah, it's very much a question of exercising restraint, because there's also one treat of this car. It does happen in real life that we need to explain to the audience. This car had no specific racing tires created for it. So the organizers of the Jaguar Challenge were basically forced to resort to the tires created for another car, which is actually the Ferrari F14. But those tires were not exactly the same. There's a bit difference there's a difference in the weight distribution. This is a heavier car than the F14, and also there was in the rim, because the sizes of the rims were different. So to make a long story short, the final result is that the rear tires on this car are wearing out very much. So if you think that this car is oversteering when you start driving it, wait until you are close to the 20 laps that we'll be doing here, because that thing is not going to be able to point straight at that point.
Indeed. I don't know if we have a formation lap for this one, do we?
We have a rolling start, so they will
Okay,
be
good
now
stuff.
going on that formation lap. There is actually even a safety car in front of them. Be launching the field.
As we can see, everyone getting away from their standing positions on the grid, and almost everyone spinning up the rear tires to get a little bit of heat into them. So on pole position for this Lucas Vidra Trophy event, we have Thiago Canola, once again showing that he is definitely one of our quickest drivers here at ISO. Second on the grid is Mikey Grems. I believe he's put in the most laps of anyone on the server ahead of this event, and that's proving very useful indeed, as he's lining up second on the grid. Third is Grant Riddle, another of our well-known drivers. Fourth on the grid is David Yates, another one we know very well indeed. Fifth for Sasausz Lapinski, our resident Polish driver, or one of our resident Polish drivers, I should say, maybe. Peter Lavac lines up sixth, ahead of Anders Nilsson, who's a last-minute entry for this one, but qualifying in the top 10. Very nicely done from my compatriot. Dave Miller lines up 8th, with Jason White in 9th. Steve Parker rounds out the top 10, with Juha Bos in 11th. Ray Riddle in 12th. 13th for Keo Michiels. 14th for David Saber. 15th for Brian Yannick, a little bit further back than I would have expected from Brian, actually. Jason White has qualified 16th, with Raoul Jereb in 17th, Michael Drexler in 18th, Jules Bouchard in 19th, and Simon Wattman rounds out the grid in 20th. And I think this is going to be a fantastic race to watch. There'll be so much action. Maybe not always racing door handle to door handle, but there will be a lot of action. I'm sure of that.
Yeah, we'll see. One interesting thing is that the quickest guy on track, as we've seen in the warm-up, that's Cezary Slapinski, and he's starting 5th. So he will be probably challenging for the lead very soon, because he's not the kind of driver who holds back. And now the safety car should be heading to the pits. There you go. Everybody's well aligned, and any moment we get the green light.
So everyone just trying to hold back a little bit as we are coming through Woodcote Curve. And let's wait for it. The green flag is underway and we are go. And look at this grid coming towards us. This is fantastic. 20 Jaguar XCR 15th coming into Cops. And let's see if everyone survived the first turn. Looks like everyone will survive it, just about in some cases. And
yeah,
into
taking it
Maggots
easy
and Beckett's we
because
go.
everybody knows that finishing here is paramount.
Oh, we have a
there
spinner.
goes the first one. Peter Labak lost it there.
Oh, that's very unfortunate.
Yeah, but there are big runoff areas. I don't think he will be able to make it back into the race.
Yep, but well back from the rest of the field. That's the big unfortunate thing for him, as he had to dig himself out of the gravel
Yeah,
trap
that's also
there.
one of the consequences of doing only 20 laps. If you make an error, it's not as if you have really that much leeway to be able to get back to the front.
Ooh, and there's Dave Miller making a move on Anders Nilsson in the meantime into Stowe as well. So
Yeah,
that's a
Grant
position made.
has already placed himself second. Is being challenged now by Mickey Grems and David Jakes. While Canola seems to be, for the moment at least, comfortable in the lead. But the way that Grant is power sliding that car, I wouldn't think that he will have too much of the black stuff in the rear rims when the end of the race comes.
We'll simply have to wait and see. Ooh, as he's very wide there, onto the grass, but able to hold on to it. Let's look back, jump on board with Thiago Canola now, looking back from the lead car on Grant Riddall and Mikey Grems and David Yates and Slapinski and
There is
Nilsson.
a spin. Michael Drexler has broken a wheel and has abandoned the race.
Oh dear, that's unfortunate. Let's see if we can possibly catch that. Oh dear, he lost it into bridge. Hit the
And
bridge
Grant
parapet.
challenging Thiago Canola very much.
Wattman did a very good job at avoiding Drexler's car then. And back with the lead as we are. That looked very close indeed.
Interesting how Slapinski is not really pushing it. He's basically just following David Jakes and trying to be smooth with the car. I think that he's very much aware of the tire situation that's going to happen and towards the end of the race, and he's not doing. I mean, he's not even driving as we saw him do it in warm-up. He was evidently in warm-up just trying to see where the limit was, how quick he could go before losing the car and he was all over the
here
place.
He comes. Here comes Grant with all up the inside. Sorry to cut you off. Oh, just about able to hold on to it. Look at that. Made it work. Dove in there and parked the bus and takes the lead. And now Mikey Grems is looking for an opportunity as well. But Thiago putting the car a little bit towards the inside, deterring any kind of move being done. And now on board with Grant Riddall looking back from the lead car. And very much you can see while looking back that he is working the rear end of his car quite heavily, so as
Opa! There go two cars in the end. That's Kejo Michiels and David Sabre.
Oh dear, that's
they were
unfortunate.
Dicing it, and at some point
looks like Sabre was ahead. Sabre lost it down at bridge curb, and unfortunately Kejo tried to go around outside, but that didn't work and contact was made. Saber trying to limp back to the pits with what looks like a rear right puncture and no rear wing. Looks like KO was able to get back going. Not sure if he's going to pit or not. Looks like he will try to keep going. But that was very heavy damage indeed, and Lavac already up into 16th. Oh, as there's another spinner, Jules Bouchard running wide at Copse turn 1 and half spins over the curbing, and that's another position gain from.
And Grant is leaving anything on the table. He is now pushing and opening a bit of a gap. Mickey Grimes is already past Thiago Canola.
And Yates trying to slip by as well, but not able to do it there.
I should mention especially Dave Miller, who is holding on to 7th position, right behind all these aliens, and he's doing very well on that car.
Yeah, certainly looks like, compared to the other drivers, at least in club there, he's looking to be looking after the tires and the car a little bit more, so being able to hold on is very impressive indeed. And also Steve Parker's leading the next group behind, so he has climbed a few positions and he could very well work his way up to the leading group as well. So a couple of laps, 3 laps in, is Riddle in the lead, Grimes second, Canola third, Yates fourth, Schlapinski fifth, Nilsson sixth, Miller seventh. And then we have Parker in 8th, White in 9th, Ray Riddle in 10th, Juha Bos in 11th, and Brian Yannick in 12th. And then there's a bit of a
Steve
gap
is not
to
losing
White,
his cool,
Jareb,
but
and Lavac.
Steve is not losing his cool, but what a group of followers he has.
Oh, and it looks like David Saber has rejoined just ahead of the leaders. Well, let's have a look there at the battle for 8th. Oh, Steve has run deep.
Juha now trying to overtake
spins.
Brian Yannick. And they touch, but he makes it through in Maggots. Yeah, Steve Parker spins.
Which is very unfortunate, but that's just one of those things, trying to push just a little bit too hard to stay ahead and locked up a tire and ran wide. Does it look like Ray Riddle is under attack?
As soon as you look at tire, the car is immediately veering to one side, because you have one wheel rolling and the other is braking the car. So you go like a tank. They break one of the chains in order to turn, so with the car is more or less the same. Now David is having to let all the leaders pass.
And he did a very good job at it from what I can see. But Schlapinski...
And Mickey Grimes, now freed of Thiago Canola, is pursuing Grant Riddle and getting close to him.
When Yates
now understeering very much, although Cesarius is not able to capitalize on that one.
Oh, indeed. Schlapinski himself tried to move and ended up compromising himself at the same time, so just one of those things. But it's interesting to see that Grant Riddle is not able to run away there. Grimes is holding on, as is Canola, Yates, Schlapinski and Nilsson and Miller to some extent. He's a little bit behind, but clearly looking after the car far more than the others are. And Whitehead has climbed up to 8th, so a good opening 5 laps for him.
Yeah, he capitalized on Steve having a spin.
And Lavac back up into 12th, so he's chasing after points. As here is the battle again, Schlapinski and Yates. Yates way on the defensive in every single turn. Now Schlapinski trying to get the cut back onto the hanger straight for a good run down it, but... Oh, Yates is a little bit sideways on the curbing though. Let's see if he has an opportunity. He's certainly looking for it. Side by side into the braking zone for Stowe, but looks like Yates is going to hold on for now. Oh, Schlapinski actually tries round outside. Oh, and Yates gets sideways. And looks like Schlapinski will take the position and possibly Nilsson as well. Nope, not happening, but Schlapinski passed and up into 4th. Or barely, he locks up a little bit into club, but is able to hold on to it and keep on going.
Yeah, there was a bit of contact there, so I think Cesario should probably give that position back.
Not sure. It depends on how it actually affected the cars. It wasn't a contact that I would expect make the car move quite like that, but it's one. I'd say it's more one of those racing incidents where two cars look for more or less the same piece of tarmac, and obviously with these more or less road cars on slicks.
And here we see how much of a bad luck David Saber had, because he spun, but once he came out of the pits, he's actually, well, able more or less to stay with the leaders. So it's a shame that he had that spin and got out of the track and then lost his position.
Very much so. And he's running 19th, one lap down. He has probably about 40 seconds up to the next car in front.
And Mickey Grimes is already very much on Grant Bridal's tail.
Oh, he is indeed. Let's watch this from Mikey Graham's perspective, as he's trying to... Ooh, as he actually misses a gear there by the sound of things, but he's chasing after Grant, giving him a bit of a run for his money. Ooh, but he gets very sideways into Stowe that time, and Grant pulls a car length and a half on the American there. Ooh, but now Grant locks up into club chicane.
And I think that Keijo Miki's just quit with a wrecked car.
That's very unfortunate, but that's one of those things. Looks like he parked it indeed, or we actually lost it.
And Juha Boss has made it past the group. He is now ahead of Jason Whitehead, of Brian Riddle, and Brian Janik.
Wow. So,
probably capitalizing on any kind of problem from Jason Whitehead.
Quite so, as I think Whitehead just had a bit of a problem right there, ran wide at Abbey. And now through Bridge, Ray had a slight opportunity but didn't go for it. Now Brian's up inside instead. Hold on to your hats. If you're holding back anywhere, you are getting passed by the next one in the train, and Brian moves up into 10th spot and the final points paying position for now.
We're only 5 laps into the race. Whoa, there's a spin there in the back.
That was Saber, I believe.
Yeah.
Who unfortunately lost it right there, trying to put on a bit too much power on.
Yep.
Or was that someone running wide at Copstow? That was Juha Boss using all the available runoff. One really sideways is Ray Riddle right there. As is Yannick, so everyone really working these Jaguars very hard indeed to try and go as quickly as possible. As Yates has dropped to 6th, so Anders Nilsson is up into 5th. Not entirely sure when or how that happened, but was at least... Oh, actually it was Yates at Beckett's. Looks like he locked up, got sideways on power and lost a lot of drive, and Anders with a straight, neat line out of Beckett's was able to sneak past.
And Grant is now trying to push again to open a gap. He's locking wheels and really looking fast and furious, but he isn't able to shake Mickey Grimes.
And look at that, Thiago is catching back up once again as well.
But the way that Grant's tires are locking, I would say that it's obvious that they are by now completely squared. They have several flat spots, and that's only going to hurt him in the race, because it's going to make for a lot of Stability loss. Ah, there you go. Cesarius Lapinski, fastest lap of the race. We have seen that. He's able to do the quickest laps. It's just that it seems that when he's behind the other cars, he's not able to push that decisive passing maneuver.
Could be that he is a little
Yeah,
bit.
but if he's on clean air, he certainly is very quick.
Indeed. Could also be that he doesn't really trust in the way that he is able to slow the car down if the car in front brakes earlier than he would expect, and that's why he's a little bit
Yeah, because
careful
with these
as well.
cars, you can only pass one of either ways. I mean, be it because the car in front makes an error or pass on the brakes. And that's not easy by any means. Well, I guess we will be seeing many more passes in this race due to driver errors than to the ability of the driver who is overtaking.
Indeed, and one who's in position to take a few positions is Peter Lavac, who's just about able to avoid the rear end of Whited. Whited had a moment on the brakes, and then Lavac, in avoidance, had a moment of his own, but both of them able to get away with it that time around into Stowe.
Yeah, but big prize for him there, because the cars in front, all of them are for position, and he's quite close to all of them. So he can get himself into the points and even into some respectable points if he overtakes that group.
Ooh, I see it's very sideways though. Ooh, just about able to hold on to it. A very nice save, and didn't lose too much time either, so very good job indeed by Peter there.
Nothing changing in the lead of the race by now. And I guess all of them are trying to preserve the tires, except Grant, who is completely unable because he's locking the wheels in all the turns, which is probably just only compounding his problem. I think Mickey Grimes is seeing how Grant is locking the tires all around, and he's basically just waiting there until Grant has basically nothing in his rims, and then he will pass him easily.
That is very likely the case, as we are closing in on half distance, and I didn't have an opportunity to do it pre-race. Let's have a quick look at the trivia question for you tonight, while there is no major action by the looks of things anyway on track, apart from the fact that David Saber retired shortly after that off that we caught in the foreground of shot earlier. So the question for you all to ponder for the next 10 or 11 laps is: in 1994, TWR, or Tom Walkinshaw Racing, used the cockpit and greenhouse of the XJR15 tub as the basis for what car? Was it A, the Nissan R390? Was it B, the Jaguar XJ220? Or was it C, the Mazda MX-R I believe that's called Dash 01? I have to say, I got that one wrong, but I believe that all of you watching will have more knowledge on that than I do. Anyway, let's see how the action is looking on track. We have another lap completed, so 10 laps in the books, 10 laps to go. And I believe we have probably another 2, maybe 3 laps before the tyre wear really starts showing, as we have a yellow flag here somewhere. Let's see what that is all about. There's a spinner on the infield. Presumably that may have been Watman. It is indeed. He was the nearest one to be lapped, so not too big of a surprise that it was him that unfortunately had a bit of an off ahead of the leaders. But luckily out of trouble for any of them.
Dave Miller, he spun. He's now in the grass, but he's still in 7th position, although he's just now being overtaken by Brian Janik. losing another position now to Ray Riddle. But
And yes,
let's see if he also loses it to Jason Whitehead, who is coming there, smelling the blood in the water. Yes, he goes by. Locks the wheels all around. And Peter Labak.
just about.
And look at that. Miller is trying to get that position back, but he's going to lose it to Peter Labak.
Well, I
Yes,
think,
Peter makes it through.
or maybe not. Dave going for the very inside, but has to give way. As both Whitehead and Lavach outbreaks themselves.
Miller was unfortunate that this happened in such a narrow part of the track, because otherwise, with the way they had been stopped in the track, he could have passed and regained his position. Now he has to fight for it.
Definitely so, and it'll be interesting to see, and also interesting to see that Lavach has not been able to make a dent on Whitehead yet. Although there are a lot of laps left for Lavach to move further up the field. Us up ahead is Whitehead sideways, so he is feeling the pressure. As we can see him really
Grimes has
spinning up the
closed on
tires.
Grant Riddle, whose car is starting to be very wide looking.
Ray Riddle has had a spin. Sorry to cut you off, but Ray Riddle spins and loses 3 positions with that. Had a spin in Luffield 1. As he came into the corner, locked up, trying to brake a little bit too late, and the car went round on him. Very easily done, and Ray unfortunately drops to 12th, and that means Peter Lavach is up into the points. And now really looking to give Whitehead a red-hot go, as Whitehead has to take an unorthodox line, but is able to make it work. But now really sideways. Will he be able to hold on to it? That is a lot of sawing at the wheel, but he's able to keep the car on the grey stuff. Lavach now spins. Lavach hit the curb. But manages to avoid the barriers and gets going, loses 2 positions, possibly 3. As here comes Steve Parker on his recovery drive. He has a hot head of steam and pushes past as well.
And we got the yellow flag and a car in the wall, which is Jason Whitehead.
Oh, dearie me.
Yeah, he recovers, but same situation here. The rest of the pack comes very quickly from behind.
Well, I think he had a short enough straight to be able to recover to some extent. He just needs to cool down the tires.
Jules Bouchard nearly hit the leaders because he had spun there on the track. Grant Riddle has made it safely, followed by Grimes and Canola. They are playing the rubber band with the distance between them, but there is no change there. And one thing that you can see is how much Grant Riddle is working with the brake pedal, because he's using it a lot to basically stabilize and control the car. You can see his brake legs flashing way more than in the case of Mickey Grimes, who is driving much more calmly, much smoother. And this is going to mean a big problem for Grant towards the end of the race, because those tires are going to be completely shot. Oh! Grimes is now on the grass.
Oh dear.
So he loses the position to Canola. And here comes Cesarius Lapinski very quick from behind. We'll see if he's able to make it.
Not quite, although he could have the run through the corner, as Mikey takes a very defensive line into Stowe, and Slapinski is looking for the run out of the corner. He should have a little bit of extra speed, but let's see if he can make it into the braking zone at Club. Really locked up. That's not going to happen with a move there when you enter the braking zone like that. Let's actually jump on board with Slapinski here and watch this fight for a few corners as they are heading into Abbey, and Cesarius really taking it easy into there. Mikey trying a lot harder, as we can see, and now into Bridge. And Cesarius struggling a lot with the car, as is Mikey, really sideways. And we can really see that the tyre wear is starting to take effect. These heavy machines on tyres that could probably have done with a bit more longevity, shall we say.
And I think that I know why Cesarius picked that skin, because when I look at the driver helmet, I can easily understand it.
You see, in
The driver helmet looks like the Polish flag is wet and red.
Ah, of course. I was more looking at what driver it was, but I would agree with you on that, and I believe that is actually
And
Leslie's
Jason White
helmet.
was just there on the grid as they passed him. Bit of a spin there.
Ooh, nearly had a roll back into the leaders there, but he lost it mid-corner and slid all the way out into the outside curbing, and he just about stops the car from rolling back onto the racing surface. Really close call, but very
It's
good,
amazing
safe
how
recovery.
Grant is able to keep driving with those tires.
Oh, Peter Lovett has been disqualified. What?
Let's see that. Maybe he spun and drove in. Okay, he had a spin. And I think he got a bit disoriented. Ah, yeah, I see what happened. He rejoined the track, but doing a big cut through the grass.
Ah.
And yeah, of course, he was therefore disqualified because the game sees that, well, it's obviously too much, too heavy of a cut through the track.
Indeed, that's very unfortunate, but one of those situations where if you cut, you will have to take the risk of being penalized, be it live or post-race. And obviously the live steward, being the game, felt that that was not correct. And still the fight for third is on, and Thiago is still holding on to Grant Ridall for first and second, so still a lot to play for with 6 laps to go.
Sarius a bit more behind. Apparently, Mike has been able to get his act together and be able to settle again into his rhythm.
Oh, and unfortunately Ray Ridall had a spin at Club, and that means he dropped from 10th to 12th, and now whited back into the points.
And it's quite amazing how Grant Riddle has picked the lead. Oh, whoa, whoa, there was a car in the middle of the track and Grant nearly hit it. That was Raul recovering from a spin. Now he makes room for Thiago.
When Jules Buchardes had a big off at Cops as well, Vatman in the pits. Ah, so that's what happened to Raul in as well. Well, that looked a little bit close, but good thing it was in a fairly slow part of the track, so no major harm done. As Ray Ridall is running slow as well, I believe he may have had a spin going into Cops. So this is really taking a toll on all our participants. Oh, as David Yates is off into the grass, but saves it and is able to keep going. That looked very much like he was going to spin all over, but able to recover and needs to take it just a little bit easy for a couple of corners here while he cleans the tires up.
There's certainly many drivers who are using the runoffs, the grass, and a lot of things. And the game has a lot of tolerance, but with Peter Lavak, that was basically as much as it got. Cutting the whole section, and well, that's why he got disqualified. Although obviously that was non-intentional. He just probably got a bit disoriented after turning around and tried to join the track when he saw it in front of his car.
Indeed. We can still see that Grant is locking up those tires. That is, I can't believe he's able to drive that car by now.
Yeah, it's amazing. I would have expected him to be already like sitting in the grass on the side of the track, but no. There he goes. Although the car is understeering a lot, we can see that because there is much more turning in the wheels than the car is actually doing. And I believe it looks to me as if he he has scrubbed his tires so much that he doesn't have a lot of grip in the fronts anymore, and he's able to do his preferred style of driving, which reminds a lot of what Fernando Alonso does, which is brutally leaning the car on the fronts and controlling the understeer there, balancing the car. It's a bit brutal, but it's very effective, as we've seen him.
For sure. I mean, you don't win 2 world championships for nothing.
There's Jules Bouchard now with a wrecked car in the middle.
Yeah, missing a front right wheel there. He had a massive off at Copse and has been able to drag the car around the lap, so...
Making it into the pits.
Certainly can't fault his will to finish the race. And Ray Vidal has retired, I just noticed. So that was trouble with the car when he was running slow at Copse. Must have been, as he is now retired, and it happened quite a while ago. And looks like Whitehead has been able to open up a gap to Steve Parker, actually. So these two having a somewhat distanced fight, but you can be sure that they are keeping an eye on where the other is at most times around the track, as it is a fight for the final point in this event. And once again, Johan Bos and Dave Miller in a fight. They were of course fighting for the BTCC Championship, the Independence Cup, a couple of years ago, and had a few run-ins and very close battles, and back at it once again in these Jaguars, when they are again in similar paced machinery. Very interesting to see how that happens whenever drivers have similar machinery or similarly paced machinery, that some drivers gravitate towards each other no matter what machine it is, but as long as they are equally paced.
And with 5 laps to go, it seems as if Canola is speeding up a bit. He has probably preserved his tires way more than Grant Ridal. Well, because basically Grant hasn't preserved them at all. And we'll see if this is going to play a role now in these 5 laps that are remaining. But he gained 0.2 of a second in the last lap. And with Grant smoking big time those tires, it wouldn't surprise me much if he gains a bit more, which seems to be the case now. 0.4 of a second now. So it's 1.5, about 1.5 of a second. Grant seems to be a bit quicker into these corners, but once they go out, Thiago is closer. He's visibly closer now, actually.
Well, let's jump on board with Thiago Canola and see how he's working the car for at least a few corners here, and see if he can close the gap even further. And with the way they have been driving, I would expect Thiago to have a bit more turning in the car, so in the turns he should be able to gain a bit of time.
Whitehead defending as he can from Steve Parker. That's the 10th position, is the last points paying one, so it's no wonder that he's sticking to it as much as he can.
So they've closed up once again. They had a bigger gap than that half a lap ago or so. When Whitehead hitting the curb, that could be very troublesome indeed. That's one of those situations where you need and want to run as close as possible to the curbing, but obviously if you end up hitting it, you're in a whole heap of trouble. And it looks like while Thiago has sped up, Grant has been able to respond and actually open up the gap further on this particular lap.
Quite amazing indeed. So it's still Whited and Parker, the ones who are having the most stressing race so far. Whited is all over the place with that Jaguar.
And Steve with his more calm and careful drive. Oh, as I say that, I'm so sorry, Steve. I put probably a commentator's curse on that. As I say, he's calm and smooth in his driving. It touches the curb there and it unsettles the car quite a bit and it sends him into a spin. Let's see it right here, actually a little bit sideways before, and touching the curb, that unsettled the car enough to force it into a full 360 spin. Oh, and another spin because his tires are now overheated, obviously, so that unfortunately... Oh, and Whited has had a spin as well. So both of them with a moment, so the difference between them is probably more or less the same as it were a few corners ago.
Even things.
Oh, and Whited all crossed up coming through Woodcote.
Yeah, same thing to Mickey Grimes, which has allowed Cesarius to get a bit closer. So everybody's getting antsy towards the end of the race, obviously. All of those that have a car in shooting distance. And there goes Dave Miller. He spins, he hits the barrier and loses the rear wing.
Oh, that's unfortunate. And Jereb is beached on the curbing.
And Parker is now trying to overtake Whited, whose tires are absolutely finished.
He's really having to work for that car, and they're coming up to the place where Jereb has spun. Hopefully, they are able to spot him in time and avoid disaster.
And Miller nearly hits the stopped car of Raúl Jereb.
Parker loses it on the braking and really has to pull on the lock stop. Oh, and Dave Miller going slow, obviously, with that damage. He may actually even have a puncture. Looks like the rear right is slightly down on his car. Could have been the corner though, but definitely taking it easy here. So Whited up into 9th and Steve Parker shortly up into 10th. And Bowles still in 8th, Yannick in 7th, Yakes in 6th, and a little bit back from the rest up in front. Nilsson in 5th. Rems in 4th now with Slapinski in 3rd, so Dave swapped positions. And the difference between 1st and 2nd is still about the same as it were a couple of laps ago.
Yeah, it's been those 2 seconds all the time.
So it looks like the battle to possibly watch is the chance that Anders Nilsson is able to catch up to Mike Rems.
Slapinski made it past Rems. We have missed that.
Indeed.
With all the action of on track.
It's one of those unfortunate things when there's action all over the place. Oh, Slapinski loses it! Is he actually able to avoid the barrier? He does, and Mikey loses it in sympathy almost.
Wait, because Anders Nilsson is coming from behind. So if Mickey isn't careful, it's not that he won't be able to overtake Slapinski. He might see himself losing a position.
We are now on board with the Swede in the number 16 Jaguar, and he is really close to Grams now.
Yeah, he has preserved the tires much better because he has not been involved in any heavy fighting like this too. So now he's in a much better position at the end of the race than the others.
Definitely the case, and we can see there just in Woodcote that Rems is quite loose. Meanwhile, Anders is very, very smooth. And now there's a yellow flag, and Rems loses it. Anders avoids him, but spins. We just about avoids being stuck on the curbing there, so looks like Anders takes the position, but unfortunately for both of them, Slapinski romps away with 3rd place as he was able to hold on. I wonder what that yellow flag was for, though, who it was for.
Oh, probably a slow car entering the pits, because it gives you a yellow for that.
Probably, yeah.
But this is not over yet. There is still a lap to go, and these cars are now in a very, very tricky situation with the tires completely shot.
Quite so. And I believe we're actually on the final lap, so Grant Midall heading towards the complex for the final time. And he's opened up a massive gap now with 3.5 seconds, so I think Thiago decided to settle for second. As Grant now heads into Priory. And then Brooklands, and taking it quite gingerly, as he has a bit of a cushion to work with into Luffield 1 and through Luffield 2, and as long as he is able to accelerate here, there shouldn't be any kind of trouble for him. And he indeed takes the checkered flag and wins the opening round of the Lucas Vidra Trophy and bags 15 points. Grant Midall bags 12 points for his campaign. Looks like Schlapinski will finish third and score 10 points for himself. Anders Nilsson was able to avoid Mikey Grems and gets rewarded with his steady, consistent drive with fourth. Meanwhile, Mikey with a late race oopsie gets fifth, and David Yates not quite able to keep up with the top 5. Looks like he will get 6th in this race, as he is closely pursued by Brian Yannick, so either Brian has driven like a demon on this final lap, or Yates has taken it a little bit easy, but Yates finishes 6th, Yannick 7th. Juha Boos looks like he will finish 8th, as he heads towards the start-finish line now. And there he goes. And I see Jason Whited also on the lead lap, coming through Luffield 2 and looking to finish 9th and in the points. I think he will be quite happy with that, considering how many close moments he looked to have had during this race. And Steve Parker, with his persistent drives, bags 1 point and 10th place in this race. Dave Miller looks like he has finished 11th. Jason White finishes 12th. Simon Watman has finished in 13th, with Jules Bouchard in 14th. Ray Riddle was the first of our retirees in 15th, with Michiels 16th, Sabers 17th, Drexler 18th. Lavach unfortunately was DQ'd and 19th. And I believe in the list we are missing Raul Jereb, who will have finished probably 15th, 16th, 17th in this race, give or take.
So, well, we promised everybody an eventful race. It's certainly been much more eventful than many of the drivers would have wished.
Certainly so, and unfortunately for many of our drivers, we did catch a few of the different moments they had, but really good fun to watch the drivers trying to manhandle these cars and keeping them on the grey stuff.
It may be time to resolve that trivia question before maybe someone jumps to be interviewed.
That's certainly a good call. Let's have a look at the trivia question once again. So the question for you tonight was, in 1994, TWR, or Tom Walkinshaw Racing, used the cockpit and greenhouse of the XJR15 tub as the basis for what car? Was it A, the Nissan R390? Was it B, the Jaguar XJ220? Or was it C, the Mazda MXR-01? Do you have any guesses on this one, Alberto?
I think it was the Nissan R390.
And you are correct. It was the Nissan R390. I, meanwhile, thought it was actually the the Jaguar XJ220. So clearly I was wrong, but good to see that.
Yeah, that was
that you're gonna
a
be
very
right.
different car. It was a completely street car. I don't think it was done for homologation purposes. I've always liked, by the way, that car more than the Jaguar 15, but it's one of those cars ignored in the history of Jaguar because it wasn't a V12. It was a turbocharged six-cylinder, and well, all the Jaguar enthusiasts were like absolutely ignoring it and angry that Jaguar first announced it with a V12 and then didn't deliver because of cost, I believe, and development problems. Then the XJR 15 came out, and it was what all the sporting fans of Jaguar had been waiting for. So this car sold like pancakes. It was very, very popular back then. As we have seen in this race, it was sold, but with the condition that it had to be raced in this series. So the investors hired drivers to drive them with the motto of not trashing the cars. Although once they were on the track, not everybody stuck to that. But yeah, and then that allowed people to get hold of these beautiful cars. That's the story about them.
Well, it's certainly very, very beautiful cars indeed, and clearly performance machines, even though maybe not to the utmost technical level that it could have been. And I believe there might actually be a few of these cars still around, even today, which is very, very good to know as well. While we wait for people to maybe want to join us for an interview, we'll also have a quick look at what is coming up in the coming couple of weeks, where we have the Gran Premio Tío Pepe de España, round 2 of 16 of our 1986 F1 Championship. 1500 bhp in qualifying trim turbo engines, a lot of power, a lot of wheel spin, and if we are watching from first round at Brazil, a lot of really good racing.
I should have probably announced it myself because, as I can see, the Swedish pronunciation is not exactly up for the Spaniard standards when
Then
it comes to
please
saying.
go ahead.
It will actually be Gran Premio Tío Pepe de España. So that'd be in Spanish.
Thank you very much. I do my best, but obviously I didn't learn Spanish in school.
You do great. It's just that, well, when you're talking about probably when you're talking Germanic or English languages, that's something different because the pronunciation is somehow similar. But in Spanish, the R is so different, and that's so. It's very funny actually to hear someone from out of here speaking our language.
I suppose it's also a case of, at least for me, I have what would be called a French R, I think, where I say the R quite far back in my throat, my mouth, compared to what I believe most southern European countries have, where they say the R at the front of their tongue and the front of their mouth. And
so anyway,
sorry, yeah. Also coming up, before we forget ourselves, we have in 2 weeks' time the Datsun Twin 200, round 2 of our 1978 USAC Championship, that being at Ontario Motor Speedway, updated and enhanced for our 78 Championship by Alberto, and judging by the photo that we put up on our YouTube page, it is going to be a grand looking one. And racing we saw in the championship was very, very good as well in the first round at Phoenix.
So it seems that everybody is quite tired and not up for being interviewed. Which I can totally understand because this must have been one of the most exhausting races, even if it's a short one.
Indeed.
So I think we can call it a day and end our broadcast here.
Indeed. I will just have a quick reminder that we have this series in memory of Lukas Vidra, a great guy that was lost way too soon, and we hope he enjoyed what we put on here tonight, and I hope you watching this event enjoyed it as well. And yeah, any final thoughts, Alberto, before we finish this first round of the LVT 2021 event off?
Well, it was the eventful race we expected, and what I didn't expect, to be honest, was Grant getting away with it with the damage he inflicted to the tires. But then again, we're not discovering Grant's talent right now.
That's certainly very surprising, but clearly showing that if you try hard enough, it can work. And he certainly put on a very, very stellar drive tonight. And actually, Cesar Shlapinski is down in the green room, so let's actually have a quick... Oops, that's me joining the wrong channel.
Sound muted. Channel created. Sound resumed.
There we go.
User joined your channel.
And we are now joined by Cesarius, who finished third. Congratulations on finishing third in what I'd assume is probably one of the most tiring races in quite a while for you.
Yes, it is, and I'm very happy to be at the end because I just 2 laps before the end I realized how bad my tires are, and I decided not to do anything, fancy, just bring it back to the end. And I actually just 2 laps before I thought it's finished because I was on the grass all the way, and somehow I don't know how, but I managed to save it, and I didn't want to do anything else, just be on the finish and stop the car.
That's certainly looked like the case, and we saw you having quite a good fight there with Mikey Grems, especially for many laps, and a good 5 or 6 way fight early on in the race, so that must have been quite enjoyable as well.
Yes, actually, I seen that Mikey is having problems with a grip, and I said what he's doing, and it was the moment I realized that my grip is also as bad as his. And it was just a waiting game. Whoever puts his foot too much down and spins the tires, and we both got some problems, but I came out on the top of it.
Well, that's understandable. I suppose that one would have the luck and one would have lesser luck in that regard. Also, looking at what's coming up, we have the Spanish Grand Prix next weekend. Any thoughts or expectations on that one for you?
Well, not the very high one, as I don't know the track completely. I raced there in Grand Prix 2 times, the Micro Pros Grand Prix 2.
That's
it was
back
20 years ago or something like that. So, but on the other hand, I don't have any bad habits with different physics or something like that. So it's Carta Blanca for me, and I hope I will learn a lot on this track and have a good fun.
That sounds like a good call, and obviously you won at Phoenix, and 2 weeks from now we have the Datsun Twin 250 and at Ontario. I know I asked you previously, but have you had an opportunity to drive there now and have an idea of what's to come?
Well, in 1974, when I drove the Coyote, it was the top-notch car and the pressure was on, You can't be bad with such a good car. Now it's a bit more, it's a bit more easy now. I just want to finish. I would just stick to the Alberto's golden point that about staying on the lead lap. That's my goal, and everything else is just good luck with the yellows or with the traffic and things like that. And we will see. I realize that the car isn't the very favorite one.
Well, that's understandable, I suppose, and probably a good way to look at it. Have it be a 150-mile transport to the last 50 miles. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us for a post-race interview here, and congratulations once again on 3rd place.
Thank you very much. See you next time.
Sure will.
Channel switched.
So that wraps up our broadcast here. To all of you who have tuned in and watched the broadcast, thank you very much. I hope you have enjoyed the show, and I hope you tune in next weekend for the Spanish Grand Prix. And also Alberto had to leave for some admin duties, but he sends his regards, and thank you very much to him for joining me for this one. And yeah, hope you all have a great week. Take care, and see you all next week for the Spanish Grand Prix.